Okay, can you give me your name, please?
Sylvia Rollins.
Oh, that's a beautiful name. So what was your date of birth?
November 14, 1928.
Oh my goodness, you were born the same year as my mother.
Yeah, that's
November 14th, 1928.
right. 1928.
Where were you born?
That's all.
In Nassau. And who were your parents?
Phoebe Gibson Rollins. She was from Long Island.
Long Island.
Phoebe?
People call her Phoebe,
Phoebe.
but her name was really Phoebe
Okay. So she was a Gibson?
Gibson.
Rollins.
Mary Rollins.
Right.
Okay, and who was your father?
Who was her father?
Your father.
Roderick Rollins.
Right.
Lord Roll, really.
That's
He
right.
never claimed that, but he's a Lord Roll.
Yeah.
Roderick Rollins. Where was he from?
Bimini.
And who was that Harold Hastings' brother?
Who?
Harold Hastings? My grandfather was Harold Hastings. Was that
Harold.
Roderick's brother?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Roderick's brother.
Okay. So you were born here in Nassau. Did you have any sisters and brothers?
Yeah, but there was some on my mother's side, some on daddy's side.
Okay. Okay. So where did you live in Nassau?
Oh boy. My mother's who went here, she found a room
They live on
empty.
East once.
I lived in the Freetown area
Right.
mostly.
Freetown?
Yes, Mom.
Okay. And you stayed there most of your life in Freetown?
Most of my childhood I spent in Freetown, Lion Road, Kemp Road.
Okay. So where did you go to school?
I went to Victoria School on Bay Street.
Was that a government school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Named for Queen Victoria.
Okay. And is that...
No, I have to move on and tell you. Then I went on to Eastern Junior on Shirley
Eastern
Street.
Senior, right.
Then I went to the Baptist.
One of the
Okay,
Baptist
another
colleges.
Baptist school. Okay.
Yeah.
So once you completed school, what did you do?
When I completed school,
She taught too.
I never really completed school, you know.
No?
I was always pursuing education.
Excellent. So you were always in a learning stage.
Uh-huh. I went to several places. Some of the teachers have passed on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyhow, Eastern Senior was one place,
Mm-hmm.
government school.
Uh-huh.
Then I went on to Baptist something college.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I would keep going to different schools,
Right.
finishing schools or something.
Okay.
Then the Progressive Liberal Party sent me to Cornell University
Oh,
to be
excellent.
trained as a teacher.
Okay. So where did you teach after you came home?
Did I teach S.E. McPherson? Then I went to Air Valley, and that's
I understand you worked with the airline too. Which airline did you work with?
British Overseas Airways.
BOAC.
BOAC. Wow.
BOAC.
What did you do there?
I was the chief PBX operator.
Okay.
We call them telephone operators, but the British call them PBX operators.
Okay.
So they just say telephone operator, leave it like that.
Right. Okay. That was after you finished teaching?
Before,
Okay. Do you remember some of the people who worked at BOAC? People like Freddie Higgs?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
I think I do.
Okay.
I mean, it's like showing off, if I remember.
Okay. So how many children did you have?
9.
9? And hospital.
Time they were the Rollins were my happiest days when I went to spend summer with them.
Mm-hmm.
We had a nice time. They were
Okay.
my cousins on daddy's side, but they were very nice children growing up. I would go to the beach with them. We'd sit and talk. Then and Floyd would talk about the Adventist church with me. Their mother, I call her Floyd. She's the sweetest thing I ever met.
Were you
Oh,
a Seventh-day Adventist back then? Were you a Seventh-day Adventist back then?
No,
Okay.
I was so smart, little girl, hardworking. I always got a job somewhere doing something. But I made up my mind in life, and my mother did that. You will never work as a maid in anybody's house. My mother drilled that in my head. She said, you will never work as a maid in anybody's house. So I grew up going with that in my mind. And I just went different places doing different things.
Was there much prejudice when you were growing up? Did you have any issues with prejudice badly?
No, I had nice friends. They were on the, they was half and half and half. But they loved Sylvia. I know one old lady used to tell me I was her daughter, and she was white and slow.
She's an author, you know.
This
She wrote a
low,
book on
and made me low.
Yeah.
She tell me, if I go to her house and call her, somebody say,
have one of
Nanny,
them.
somebody's out here to you. Say, who is it? And they would say, it's a colored girl. She'd say, tell her, what's her name? What's your name? I said, Sylvia Rollins. And then Mr. Lowe said, she's no colored girl, she's my daughter.
So I understand you wrote some books.
Huh?
Did you write some books?
A poem book, yeah.
Okay.
And she did one with poems.
Okay, yeah, she said she wrote some books on poetry. Do you remember the name of them? You have any of them available?
I guess I have that book stuff somewhere. Anyway, I wrote about growing up. It could be a story, but I wrote it in poetry form.
Okay. Also, you wrote about yourself growing up?
Yeah, everything in there is factual.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to see that book.
I'll
It's
try and
called
find it
Precious
for you
Bahama
when I go
Memories.
home.
The name of it?
Precious Bahama Memories.
Okay,
If I ever
interesting.
find it, I'll send it to you.
Okay, we'll probably be able to track it down somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I move around so much.
Mm-hmm.
I had an interesting life. I'm not ashamed to say my mother, who I lived with, was poor, but she's very proud.
Yeah.
You hear about proud and poor. My mother acted as if she had big funds in the bank. She trained me to be polite, to be proper, be well spoken between her and my daddy. You couldn't speak any bad grammar. But we weren't rich, we were poor.
Yes.
But we had food. She made sure we ate in the morning, ate during the middle of the day, and ate for supper. My daddy lived in Bimini at the time. He was building a business called the Bimini Bugle.
That's right. Hallelujah.
Yeah, so he lived in Bimini, and my mother lived right here in Nassau. I was living with her. But let me tell you the interesting thing in my life. When I was a little girl, my mother and my father got into some different,
Yes.
my grandfather heard about it. So he jumped on the boat. Him and my one uncle I have named Arthur. And he came to where we were living. And he told him, I come for my granddaughter Sylvie. I don't want her around you all. He took me for my mother and my father.
Yes.
Saying, I don't want her to go up with bickering and all that.
Yes.
Her grandmother, Cassie, and me never did this in front of our children.
Yes.
He came and took me down to Bimini with him. So I live with my grandfather. I was talking about the other night, compare walls in the yard we will live in. We Sylvie, put your socks on. Let's go. Come, Uncle I said, but Papa, her mother's at home. Let's go. Don't leave a child home by herself. Yeah, I never forget that. So Papa grabbed me up, held my hand, and he was smart old man.
Yeah.
He had in his bag, when he put his shoulder, he had an orange to put in my hand. He knew in his mind it would be nice to have them to put in my hand. He came for me, and I didn't say anything. He put the orange in my hand and said, "That's for you."
Right.
He came and picked me up from my mother and father without asking them any question. He said, "I don't want my grandchild to grow up and know who you say, I say, you say, I say." He said, "I'm taking her to live with me in Bimini. I'll never get grandpa for that." So I live a long time with my grandfather.
Okay.
So he put me, him and Uncle Arthur got me on the boat. Said, "Now I'm taking you to Bimini to live in my house." And he did. That's where I learned to say prayers before I eat. And a few other things. I'll never forget my grandfather.
Yeah.
He was the love of my life. He was rough and exterior looking,
Yes.
but he was kind in his
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah.
And what was his name?
Henry Roll.
Yeah.
So that was
Lord.
my great-grandfather, right?
Yeah.
Put the Lord there, don't take that off.
Mm-hmm.
Henry Lord
They call
Roll.
him Pa Henry.
Uh,
Pa Henry was his
they used to
nickname.
call him Pa Henry.
What did he look like?
Huh?
What did he look like?
A handsome old man.
Tall, short, dark, light.
Short.
Short and dark.
And I'm not ashamed to say he had a hunchback.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't deter him. He was very sharp. He could pick up on anything. You
Exactly.
can't fool him.
Right.
So who was his wife? Was she there?
Cassie Roll,
Yes.
Cassie Lord Roll, but I didn't
Right.
know her.
But she was a Welshcombe before she be.
But she was.
A Welshcombe.
Could be.
Yeah. Before she married him.
So was she at his house when you lived in
What
Bimini?
happened?
Was she in Bimini while you were there?
No, she had died
She had
long
died in
time
childhood.
Okay.
before then. Yeah.
Arthur was the last child.
Grandpa was him and just him, and he had a housekeeper named Rose. They used to beat me every day with a kid. She was Rose. I don't know if you all remember Rose.
No, I don't remember her.
She used to cut my behind every day.
Oh,
I don't
my
know what I
God.
did to her.
Terrible.
Yeah, but that's just negative. Don't talk about it. Anyhow, he said that in Poggy, in Bailey Town.
Really down.
No, I don't know my grandmother on daddy's side. No.
She had died.
I knew my grandmother on mother's side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the Rollins family. I love all the daddy's family.
So when you were in Bimini, did you go to school there or you were too young at that
No,
point?
I went to school for a while.
Okay. So how did you happen to come back to Nassau?
Well, my mother and daddy had divorced each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to cry about my mother. So they sent me back to her.
Yeah.
See if they can soak up some of those tears.
Yeah.
My mother and my father separated. You
Yeah.
see? And I used to be crying for every day.
So how did you get to school back in those days?
Uh,
How did you get to school back in those days?
oh, you walk to school.
Okay.
It's a small island. And you
Yeah. You mean in Nassau and Bimini?
Mm-hmm. So what about poverty? Did you all have a lot? I mean, did you ever have to go to bed without food?
What you ask me, Barbara?
Did you ever have to go to bed without food, or did you always have?
Never ever in my life.
Mm-hmm.
My mother loved to cook for her children.
That's right.
And she was always able to afford to buy food.
Uh,
She was always able to afford to buy food.
oh yeah, we wasn't poverty stricken.
That's right.
We were poor, but we wasn't poverty stricken.
Okay. You had shoes to wear and you had clothes to wear.
Yes.
Right.
No, we always had tea and bread, at least tea and bread,
Mm-hmm.
or tea and Johnny cake,
Mm-hmm.
something like that, before you go to bed. I never went to bed hungry. My mother won't have that. And she was a praying woman. If you was hungry, you had to sit, kneel down and listen to her pray.
Yes.
And by the time she get through praying, somebody to come by me.
Exactly.
Mr. Pray food in our life.
Right.
No, we were never starving like that.
Mm-hmm.
We did. I never was able to get the nice clothes I wanted, the shoes,
Yeah.
and go where the other children went that cost money. But we never strict poor.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't have.
Yes.
Do you remember some of the closest people to you, your friends? Who were the closest people, apart from the cousins?
Well, I had one girl was I tell you, in school. I didn't have any close friends. Not in school. The teachers were my friend. I made friends with the teachers. I was their little puppet. Do this, do that, do it, go to the, I would run up and down for my teachers.
Yeah,
And as a result, I was in there to their heart.
yeah.
But I didn't have any children friends. But then I grew up and I had some friends. I had a friend named Alberta Glinton.
Okay.
Beautiful friend. Then I got out of school and I met another girl. She was a nurse, Catherine Johnson.
Okay.
She was the best. Catherine was the best friend I ever had.
Okay, that's lovely.
I still think about her these days.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. But then it comes to being real sincere. See, if it wasn't sincere, I say you're not my friend. Things would happen to prove that you wasn't my friend. I was very analytical at that time.
Right.
I was so stupid. I was young,
Yeah.
but I used to observe people's actions
Yeah.
and listen to what they say. And depend on how they come over, I could decide mine is her. She's not my
Yeah.
friend. That's right.
Right.
No, I wasn't too big on friends.
What do you think was your greatest accomplishment in life?
What was my greatest?
Accomplishment.
Ugh. Like the PLP sent me to school to be a teacher.
Uh-huh.
The Progressive Liberal Party sent me to school to be a teacher.
Excellent.
I
So
was very happy.
how did you get selected for that?
You had to do a short exam
Mm-hmm.
at the, I forgot the place name. You do an exam, and a man from Cornell University, a couple of people came in and watched it. You might not have gotten everything right, but depend on how you answer the question.
Yes, yes.
You were judged as a person's college material.
Right.
Okay. You mentioned your father was he wrote a newspaper in Bimini, the Bimini Bugle.
That's right.
That was apparently the smallest newspaper in the world, they
That's
said. When they say small, what do they mean? In size?
Inside.
Size.
Okay, and it was basically just something that talked about the events in Bimini, I guess.
Right. And
They
carry
talk about
commercials as
everything
well.
he knew.
Is that newspaper still in existence?
No.
That no longer exists, the newspaper.
What happened?
That newspaper no longer exists, does
In the
it?
archives, that's one.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It went in the Guinness Book of Records as being the smallest.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, Cousin Sylvia, we thought we would take the time to just speak with you briefly.
I'm happy because I like.
Yeah, anything that you could remember at any time, maybe we could come back another day and share some more.
Yeah. It's
Yes,
some things
it was
that
a
I
pleasure.
probably would remember over a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. But if you look at that book I wrote,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things I wrote about was in relation to my life.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can find a copy of it in here. But it was
And Rosie thinks she may have one.
I may have a copy of that, and I'll show it to them.
Precious Bahama Memories.
Right.
All those things I wrote about, I lived.
And I have a copy of the smallest newspaper. The
That-
Book
oh,
Bimini Bugle.
wonderful.
Right.
Yeah, use archives, family archives right here.
I went to the archives and I actually saw a copy of the
Yeah.
Bugle.
So, you know, I had an unusual childhood. I had ups and downs, but never stopped me from believing
Yeah,
in God and who I was.
that's right.
I never felt inferior about my situation.
Amen.
I felt I was just as good as anybody who had everything to
Amen.
live on. I was very proud of being me.
Right.
And then as I grew up, I was very creative. So I started to do, the people in the neighborhood just asked me to come and straighten their hair for them.
Yeah.
I was young, but then they used to do it straight with the hot iron
Yeah,
and
yeah.
cold wood. And
Uh-huh.
So the neighbors, some of them, just asked me to come and please do their hair for them.
Uh-huh.
I did that. But other than that, I attended the Adventist church with you.
Right.
So, what is your advice for young people today?
Young people, what is that advice? What you don't have, don't steal.
That's right.
Take your time, wait on the Lord,
That's right.
and He will give it to you.
Amen.
That's right. Pray and ask the Lord for what you want. I'll tell you an interesting thing I would like you to tell them. When I was a little girl, I needed a pair of new shoes. And my mother said, I don't have any money to buy new shoes. And you know what I did? I ran to St. Matthew's Church. The door used to be open. And I could show you the proof. I knelt down and I said, Lord, Mama don't have no money to buy me a shoe. I need a pair of shoes. And you believe me, very shortly I got a pair of new shoes.
Amen. Lord, thank you.